My first question is, what is your assessment of the budget 2023?
No, I think the budget has done a very good job. In fact, many of us were expecting it to be populist given the fact that this is the last budget before next year's elections. However, the budget has continued its focus in terms of driving growth actually. And what is great to see is the increased allocation for capital expenditure at I think about 4.9% of GDP from what I can see, which is very good because private sector investments has not really fully kicked in, and therefore the push on infrastructure by the government is very much appreciated. So that's number one. Number two is that they have also tried to put more cash into the hands of individuals by rationalizing the tax rates and therefore drive the consumption agenda, because consumption is a significant driver of GDP. If I remember right, the numbers are around 55%. So hence I think they're trying to push consumption also. The third thing which I particularly liked was the focus on green in terms of various initiatives on making sure that we are working towards the net zero target that the government has set for itself. And finally, I will say is that all of this has been done while keeping the fiscal deficit under 6% and also sort of setting a target to come down to 4.5% in the next 3 years or so. So all in all, I would say that amongst the different elements, and I'm not focusing on all the elements, I think it pushes the path for growth without populism and kind of keeping the fiscal deficit also in mind actually.
And so coming to data science, we have seen the emergence of AI, ML, 5G and all across segments.
Yeah.
In your field, in the Department of Finance and as a CFO,
Yeah.
what are the ways you're using data analytics to make better decisions? And also if you could give some anecdote, it would be really helpful for us.
Yeah, sure. No, I think data is clearly the new oil, as somebody said actually. All of us are so dependent on data. It has certainly made lives easier in terms of real-time information. If I go back a few years, we would kind of sort of spend a lot of time in terms of understanding the data and analytics, and it was not necessarily real-time actually. Now I think with data science and with technology coming in place, I think you're able to understand data on a real-time basis to take decisions. For us, for instance, in the hospitality industry, revenue management is a very important part of what we do, where pricing in hotels can be dynamic, where pricing can change say 2-3 times in a day actually, very much like an airline pricing. And there we depend on data which comes across on almost a continuous basis, and this would not be possible without the data science elements which has come in. So data is, in my view, helping us number one in terms of number one, driving better revenues and profitabilities. Number two, it is also through AI ML helping us to sort of get into better cost management actually. And I think this is here to stay. Of course, different companies are on this journey at different levels actually, but it doesn't matter. I think the cost of implementation of data science activities is kind of going down, which means even if you're a late entrant, I think the cost of implementation is lower. And the most important thing as a CFO, and also with a huge passion for talent management, I feel that data science is creating some fantastic new careers actually. In contrast to the belief that data science will lead to loss of jobs, I think it is creating a whole set of new employment opportunities and new kind of professionals, which I think is worth noting actually.
A good point that you made, that that the myth around that the AI, ML and data will eat up jobs.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that a person of your caliber is giving that that there's no reason to fear, but instead we need to embrace it to take better and thoughtful decision. Right. So lastly, I understand sustainability is a topic close to your heart, and looking at the budget also, if I look at it, the government is clearly focusing on making sustainable practices a part of business decision making process. So could you let us know how has the thought process changed? Because if I understand it correctly, 5-10 years back it was all about cost, and now people are talking about ESG goals, carbon neutrality, sustainability. Could you give us your two thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think ESG is simply a recognition that it is not only to maximize returns to shareholders, but also to make sure that you're fair vis-a-vis all stakeholders. I think in the mid 60s, when Milton Friedman came up with this theory that the firm exists to maximize returns to shareholders, I think nobody now kind of buys that. Ultimately, a company, a firm exists in a society where it deals with not just shareholders but also deals with employees and vendors and a whole bunch, and of course and a whole bunch of stakeholders, including nature actually, which means you can't do things which destroys your environment. And I think and I think the what has really kind of supercharged the focus on ESG is this whole area of emissions, and where the threat of 1.5 degrees increase in temperature is kind of a serious threat, and you're already beginning to see climate disasters happening in different parts of the world. So I think it's driven primarily by emissions, but it is also forcing companies to take decisions holistically, which benefits all stakeholders actually. And I think this is something that has to be embraced by companies as part of its business models actually. It is no longer some fad. It is not something that is done as a CSR activity to help skill somebody. It is intrinsically a part of what we have to do. And ultimately, what is good to know is that ESG is not a cost actually. ESG is something which can actually enable value addition and can lead to some great, business model transformations. And I think there are so many organizations like we in the Tatas, for instance, more than 100 years ago, Jamshedji Tata said that whatever we do, we have to serve the needs of the stakeholders actually, and it has served us very well. And there are such examples which are prevalent internationally as well. So I think the focus on sustainability is real, and people, of course, once again, are at different stages of their journey. And the other part I want to state is that sustainability is not just a government initiative. It is not just a firm's initiative. It is also our individual initiative. In fact, there are very interesting tools available on internet which talks about what is your personal ESG score. In the sense, do we kind of walk? Do we kind of take a plastic bag? Do we take a cloth bag? In terms of, there are personal ESG goals as well. It is not going to happen. And I think the core message here is that I don't think any of us can say that sustainability is the government's job or it is a firm's job. You can't say it's not my job actually. So I think all of us have to play a role in our daily lives and embrace it. So I think sustainability is something which there's so much more to do, and honestly, it's an existential threat to all of us in terms of what can happen to humanity if we don't act fast enough. So it is urgent, and the moment is now.
Thank you, sir.